Hi, my name is Mike from Bruce County Public Library, and welcome to today's Local Author Talk. In this series, we'll chat with local authors to learn a little bit more about them and their work. Barry Robinson is a former minister and retired psychotherapist. He's also an experienced storyteller. Barry is currently retired but busy with his writing, and today we'll introduce his latest work, A Seagull Names Papa. Welcome, Barry. Let's start with a little synopsis of your book.
Okay. A Seagull Named Papa is, I would say it's a gentle but also powerful exploration of the kind of experiences that we all have that draw out human qualities such as courage, perseverance, humility, tolerance, mercy, compassion, which I think are essential human qualities.
Especially to life in a society.
Absolutely. In terms of the kind of qualities that make us the most human, it's done by way of compelling stories that are taken from classic literature, a wide variety, classic literature, film, scripture, psychology, my own personal and professional experience. The kinds of stories that will make you laugh, make you cry on occasion, if you're tender-hearted, that will inspire you because they're about people who find themselves and learn how to be their deepest self, such as a story about, and this is a true story, a story about a very hardened, violent ex-convict who is healed by a simple invitation. Another story is about an 8-year-old girl with freckles who's trying to recover from being taunted by a schoolyard name calling. A bullying supervisor who is stopped dead in his tracks. An 83-year-old woman, former client of mine, who never got to say goodbye to her long-lost papa when he died when she was 8 years old.
Oh.
And another story is one of two married therapists who were struggling in their marriage, and unexpectedly they're visited by a clown who fortuitously helps them heal. So those are the kinds of stories. They're built around a primary theme called growing down, as opposed to growing up.
As in growing roots?
That's correct. Like plants have to grow down before they can grow up, and so do people. Buddha, for instance, became the person he was when he left a very privileged lifestyle. And he went down and he lived down in the streets with the poor and the outcasts. He learned how to be human. He grew down. And the preface of the book starts off with a story that illustrates what is meant by growing down. And then each subsequent chapter is an illustration of a particular kind of growing down, and has one or several stories that illustrate that. One of my central beliefs, deep beliefs, is that each one of us is visited throughout our lives by what I call our essential self. In other words, the person we were meant to be, who was there at the very beginning, and who mysteriously calls us to be who we are at various stages of our lives. One example is Ella Fitzgerald, I use in the book. She went on stage when she first performed. She was going to dance, and at the last minute, her announcer said, "Hold it, folks, she's changed her mind. She's going to sing." And Ella Fitzgerald went on to give an outstanding performance and became a singer. That's how that essential self calls us out. And think if people really take the risk of growing down like that, they will find. I've found, and other people have found that above us and beneath us there are forces that mean us well. But underneath life, I believe there's a grace that means to make wonders of us in the end. And that's what this book is about.
That's it. Yeah, you're certainly drawing from a lot of your own experience, a lot of deep thought about what makes us tick. I wouldn't ask you what inspires you because you're inspired by so much of that. And your book also, you have a purpose to writing it as well. It all seems very direct, but what inspires you to choose these particular stories? There must be many others that reflect the same kind of instances. Did these ones particularly stand out, or did you have to winnow it down to, like, what brought it to this book? Is I guess what I'm coming to.
I give a lot of credit to my wife, actually, who asked me to write her stories, because for years I've been a storyteller, and it's the people in my life who inspired me to write the book, starting with my wife, Susan, who's the bravest, most loving person I've ever known, but also various other people in my life, like my childhood hero and mentor, who was my pastor at the time, Ben Hodder, my hero in the psychotherapeutic field, who was Milton Erickson, renowned psychotherapist and psychiatrist, and people from classic literature, film, scripture,
Music,
Ella Fitzgerald. One in particular I'll mention, my grade 11 English high school teacher, who failed me in my first term, and I was young and vain at the time, and I marched into his office after school and demanded that he change my mark, because I've never failed at anything. He smiled at me and said, "Barry," he said, "you're not going to pass in my class unless you learn how to read or speak and write the English language." And I just stood there, didn't know what to say. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "I'll make you a deal." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "You start writing a composition tonight, 1 to 2 pages, your choice of subject. Bring it in to me tomorrow morning before classes start. I'll go over it with you. And you bring one in every morning until the end of term."
1 to 2 pages. Wow.
And I just looked at it, but I was too stubborn not to want to prove it right. So I showed up. For the first few months, I could hardly see what I wrote for all the red marks on the papers. But eventually, I began to see through them and made some sense out of it. And you know what? He became one of the finest friends I ever had in my teenage years. He was a friend until the day he died. And
Certainly we've got to know a lot about you.
yeah, I'll never forget him and always be grateful to him. So people like that inspire me. And, yeah.
See, it sounds like in some of the stories as well that you can be maybe not forced into growing down, but some strong encouragement certainly is often required.
I think it's often a very challenging experience to grow down.
Yeah.
Some of the toughest experiences we have are some of the best when we take the risk of doing it. Yeah.
What words would you use to describe yourself as an author?
I'm basically a storyteller. My ancient ancestors were Irish, and I suspect that there was a Shanachie in my bloodline somewhere. The Shanachie were the Irish storytellers, the guys and women, some who wandered around Ireland and they gathered people around a fire and they told compelling stories that not only entertained people, they fascinated them and they inspired them because they helped them understand themselves. And I've been studying that tradition of storytelling for many years and trying to master them.
Certainly a deep and interesting tradition.
Yeah, it's very deep.
So much, and political and prone to upheaval and things too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Storytellers can really get into your mind.
Absolutely.
So that's fantastic. The best ones, anyway.
Yeah.
When you're stuck on a passage or in a story, whether it's the way to relate it or what to say, how do you bring yourself out of that?
I sleep on it. Let me explain. I think most of the answers that we need to find about ourselves, which is what authors always write about, no matter what the subject we're writing about ourselves. When we get stuck and don't know where to find something about ourselves that we get stuck with during the day, I say this to my unconscious at night when I go to sleep. I said, help me out, unconscious. And the unconscious never fails. It always comes through because it's the deepest part of us, and it knows everything about us and knows exactly what we need just when we need it. And I had an illustration in one of the chapters in my book. It tells exactly that story. I did that kind of work with a client who struggled for years with a problem that he couldn't control. I went home, I asked him to go home and ask himself this question before he went to sleep. Ask him, the guy who was terrorizing him in his dreams, ask him who he is. 3 months later, he had the answer, and it changed his life.
Wow. Is it that looking at yourself, writing about consciousness that you're writing about yourself? Is that the most challenging thing about writing for you? Is it that? Do you get in your own way?
Sometimes, yeah. Because the thing that I have to watch most is to stay focused on what I need to say rather than what I want to say. I get distracted by things that I would like to say. There are things that I need to say, and that's very different. And so this book is about the things I need to say rather than I just find interesting.
And do you have an audience in mind? It seems to me that you do. You're writing with purpose.
Yeah.
Do you picture a group of people, a type of person, a particular people? Are you writing to your wife so that she can?
Some of the stories I'm not really writing to her, although there are stories about Susan in my book, and she's a big part in my life, a huge part in my life. But a woman came by just 15 minutes ago, bought a book, and she was asking about the book. And I told her about one of the chapters in it, which is called A Seagull Names Papa, about this woman who never got to say her father or papa or daddy. And she said, oh my goodness, she said, my daughter needs to hear that story.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of person I wrote the book for. People who are trying to understand themselves and the things that happen to them that really send them into a whirlwind and they don't know how to get out of it. A lot of these stories will help them because they address those kinds of issues.
Right, we'll be seeing other people asking the same questions or questioning the same things that we are, grappling with the same demons that we are.
Exactly, like fear and mistrust, and when you're abused. There's a very hard story at the center of this book about what happened to me and how I had to grow down through the experience to come out of it and learn how to deal with it.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Barry, for sharing your time and your work with us today.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you're looking for a profound and inspiring read, I invite you to reach out to Barry through email. We'll we'll put a link of his email address in the description at the bottom of this video. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.